Hello, Father Fred here again today, and we're talking about Joseph and his dreams. This whole story so far is to get Joseph into Egypt, and there's going to be some other things that are going to be interesting that happens in Egypt while he's there. He has a rough time getting there. And first of all, his brothers threw him in a cistern. Then they were going to just let him die. First, they even thought about killing him. And then they sold him to the Ishmaelites, and the Ishmaelites brought him over and sold him to Potiphar, who was the chief person for the Pharaoh and his chief servant. And then Joseph gets thrown in jail, falsely accused of trying to molest this wife of the Pharaoh. Well, after a while, the Pharaoh had some problems. We never did find out what they were, but he had some problems with his cup bearer, the one that pours wine for him, and for his chief cook, the one that cooks for him. And that chapter that we had last time was kind of short, chapter 40. So we finished chapter 40 and we went through the first 14 verses of chapter 41. And chapter 41 is pretty long, but we're going to get all of that today. We're going to start with verse 15. Now, the Pharaoh has had some dreams, and he cannot interpret them. So, you know who's going to get to interpret the dreams, because Joseph is the dreamer. He's the interpreter for dreams. Started way back there when he told his brothers that they were going to bow down to him, his dreams. They didn't like that. That was just one of the things that caused them to decide they're going to get rid of him. Okay, let's go now to chapter 15 in to chapter 41 in verse 15 of Genesis. Genesis chapter 41 verse 15. And I'm going to start with 14 just to kind of tie in with where we were, because in the last time Joseph was going to get out, because finally the cupbearer remembered 2 years later that that Joseph had been able to interpret his dream. And the Pharaoh is trying to get somebody to interpret his dream, and he can't get anybody. So finally, the cupbearer tells the Pharaoh about what happened. So Pharaoh is getting him out of prison, been in there 2 years, so that he can get that dream, possibly get that dream interpreted. So let's look at verse 14 for just a moment. Verse 14 says, Pharaoh, therefore, had Joseph summoned. He's calling him out of prison. And they hurriedly brought him to the dungeon, brought him from the dungeon. But I hear it said of you, if he hears a dream, he can interpret it. Verse 16 says, It is not I, Joseph replied to Pharaoh, but God who will respond for the well-being of Pharaoh. It's not me, it's God, but he's going to do it. So it's kind of like he's giving God the glory, but God has given him the ability to interpret these dreams. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, In my dream, I was standing on the bank of the Nile. That's the main river in Egypt. And verse 18, when up from the Nile came 7 cows. Now, 7 is a number that means perfection. You're going to see 7 over and over. For instance, in the book of Revelation, the number 7 appears 54 times, and a lot of the numbers do not appear even once. The word 7 doesn't just mean something between 6 and 8. It means it's the perfect number. It is the completed number. So here's what he dreams. And when you have dreams, it's going to be from the author that is in the north. So you can remember that. It's not going to be somebody from Jerusalem. It's going to be somebody from up at the place called Shiloh that is in the northern kingdom. Verse 18 says, When up from the Nile came 7 cows, fat and well formed. They grazed in the reed grass. Perfect, but not for long. Verse 19, Behind them came 7 other cows, scrawny, most ill-formed and gaunt, skinny. Never have I seen such a bad specimen as these in all the land of Egypt. This dream is going to predict something good with the good cows and something bad with the bad cows. Verse 20. The gaunt, bad cows devoured the first 7 fat cows. So the fat cows were pretty, but the ugly cows ate them up. And they didn't get pretty themselves. They stayed ugly just by eating up the others, the good ones. Verse 21. But when they had consumed them, no one could tell that they had done so. They looked the same because they looked as bad as before. And then I woke up. So he's got one dream. Verse 22, he goes back to sleep. In another dream, I saw 7 ears of grain, still the number 7, full and healthy, growing on a single stalk. 23, behind them sprouted 7 ears of grain, full and healthy on a single stalk. 23, behind them sprouted 7 ears of grain, shriveled and thin and scorched by the east wind. The wind just drying everything up. And 7 thin ears swallowed up the 7 healthy ears, just like the cows. I have spoken to the magicians, but there is no one who can explain it to me. They really get excited about dreams. I dream all the time. I never try to figure out what they're about. Verse 25 says, Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams have the same meaning. God has made known to Pharaoh what he is about to do. So it's God that can interpret them, but he's given Joseph the ability to do this. I think he does the same thing for us. When God says he wants the hungry people to be fed, he intends for us to help, to get something done. Verse 26, the 7 healthy cows are 7 years, and the 7 healthy ears are 7 years, the same in each dream. The 7 thin bad cows have come up after them are 7 years, as are the 7 thin ears scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. So the fat cows are representing, they're going to have 7 years of wonderful crops, and then they're going to have 7 years of famine. Verse 28, things are just as I told Pharaoh. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. God's going to do this. There's going to be 7 years of good and then 7 years of bad. Verse 29, 7 years of great abundance are now coming throughout the land of Egypt. But 7 years of famine will rise up after them, when all the abundance will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, when the famine has exhausted the land. Verse 31, no trace of the abundance will be found in the land because of the famine that follows it, for it will be very severe. There's not going to be any food coming after those 7 years, so better do something. Verse 32, that Pharaoh had the same dream twice meant that the matter has been confirmed by God and that God will soon bring it about. Therefore, let Pharaoh seek out a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Go find somebody now, he says, that can take care of this and resolve the problem. Verse 34, let Pharaoh act and appoint overseers for the land to organize it during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these coming good years, gathering the grain under Pharaoh's authority for food in the cities, and they should guard it. It's going to be livelihood. The food will serve as a reserve for the country against the 7 years of famine that will occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish in the future. Verse 37, the advice pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. Could we find another like him? Pharaoh asked his servants. A man so endowed with the Spirit of God? So Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there is no one as discerning and as wise as you are. Or in other words, you're going to take over. This will be the second time he's taken over. Remember, the first time he had it made, he was second in command before he got accused. Verse 40, You shall go in charge of my household, and all my people will obey your command. Only in respect to the throne will I outrank you. Same thing he said before. You're second. I'm the only one that will be higher than you. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Look, I put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. That is tremendous. With that, Pharaoh took off his signet ring. That's what he used to sign a letter or whatever. He put it a little bit of clay and he'd put his ring on it, and it had his seal. So, and now he's giving that to Joseph. Verse 42. With that, Pharaoh took off his signet ring and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He then had him ride in his second chariot, and they shouted, Abrek, before him. And Abrek means homage or honor to Joseph. Thus was Joseph installed over the whole land of Egypt. I am Pharaoh, he told Joseph, but without your approval, no one shall lift a hand or a foot in the land of Egypt. You're going to control everything. Verse 45, Pharaoh also bestowed the name of Zephanath, Paneath, on Joseph, and he gave him in marriage Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of Heliopolis. And Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. So he also got a deal. He got a wife. 46. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh means king. After Joseph left Pharaoh, he went throughout the land of Egypt. Now, here's where the redactor comes in. He's going to have changed subjects, so he's going to put something in the middle to tie in. And what he puts in is this. During the 7 years of plenty, when the land produced abundant crops, then he collected all the food of these years of plenty and the land of Egypt, and it was enjoying and stored up in the cities, placing in each city the crops of the fields around it. So they're storing up all the food. 49. Joseph collected the grain like the sands of the sea. There was so much that at last he stopped measuring it, for it was beyond measure. Kind of like those stars in the sky and the sand on the beach. Before the famine years set in, Joseph became the father of 2 sons. And these 2 sons are important. They're going to be 2 of the heads or the chiefs of the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph named his first one Manasseh. Let's go back to 50 for just a moment. Before the famine years set in, Joseph became the father of 2 sons, born to him by Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, of a Potiphar, a priest of Heliopolis. Verse 51, Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh. That's the name of one of the tribes of Israel, meaning God has made me forget entirely my troubles and my father's house. Now his father's going to be having troubles, but that's going to be remedied because Joseph is going to be in Egypt. This whole story so far was to get Joseph into Egypt. And the second son he named Ephraim, meaning God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. Those are the two main cities or main tribes in the northern kingdom, and Ephraim is the number 1, most important. Verse 53, when the 7 years of abundance enjoyed by the land of Egypt came to an end, the 7 years of famine set in, just as Joseph had said. Although there was famine in all the other countries, every place was starving, food was available throughout the land of Egypt. So if there's no food in these other places, I'll bet you Joseph's family is going to come there looking for help. Verse 55, when all the land of Egypt became hungry and the people cried to the Pharaoh for food, Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you. 56. When the famine had spread throughout the land, Joseph opened all the cities that had grain and rationed it to the Egyptians, since the famine had gripped the land of Egypt. 57. Indeed, the whole world came to Egypt. Now, you know who's going to be coming. The whole world came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, for famine had gripped the whole world. Now that's the end of chapter 41. Chapter 42, we're going to have to start seeing some people that Joseph is going to know, that has known. Some people that would maybe throw him in a well, and maybe sell him to the Ishmaelites so that they would be taken off to Egypt. They might be going to come to him now looking for help from him after what they have done, and they might have to just pay a little price for that. But it's going to be interesting. Next week we'll see just what Joseph does as the number 2 man in all of Egypt. God bless you. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.